Kirsty. I've decided to film a little mini series about Disneyland Paris. Just a few kind of hints and tips and sort of our experiences I can share. There isn't too much in the way of those kind of videos that we could find when we were first going to Disneyland Paris, so I thought I'd film a little mini series of a few little videos. I started these yesterday, but I didn't film a proper intro, so thought I'd just give a little bit of an introduction to them. My first video, which I'll overlay here, is just to do with travel and hotels, so that's the kind of main focus of those two videos. So we're going to do those, and then my next video will be about food in the parks. We have been going to Disneyland Paris for the last, I think 4 or 3 years. 3 years? 3, I think we've been about 6 times, 7 maybe. So yeah, I thought we'd give you a little hints and tips, what we kind of like, what we don't like, just to give you a bit of an idea. We couldn't find loads of vlogs about Disneyland Paris when we were looking to go the first time. I had already been as a kid 3 times or 4 times, and Ben had already been as a child once as well, so we kind of knew a little bit about it, and we'd already been to Disney World, so we had a little look on YouTube to see if we could find any vlogs about it, but there weren't loads. There are a few sort of knocking around, but nowhere near as many as Walt Disney World, and certainly not quite as much information, so I thought it would be good to give you guys a little bit of info to impart some of our knowledge for you. So our first little section that we're going to talk about is travel. Now obviously there are quite a few different ways that you can get to Disneyland Paris from the UK. We have mostly gone by Eurostar, which is really easy, really convenient way to travel. We get the train from St Pancras, the Eurostar terminal there, and we have got the train directly into Paris Central, which is Gare du Nord station. On our most recent trip in January, we actually went on a indirect route via Lille, so we had like an hour stopover at Lille before we then got an SNCF train from Lille directly into Disneyland Paris station, which was really easy, and that's actually been my favourite way to get there so far. It's quite nice to break up the journey, and the actual time that it took from leaving St Pancras to getting into Disneyland Paris station was pretty similar to the time that it takes to get to Gare du Nord and then transfer on an RER train into Disneyland Paris for me. And we had booked another trip to go that way, indirect via Lille, this gone Wednesday, coming back on the Saturday morning the same way, but obviously that was cancelled, so we couldn't go on that one. But definitely when we rebook, we've got vouchers to rebook, so we'll definitely be rebooking that way again, because that was definitely the most convenient for us. But saying that, Eurostar into Paris, really easy. One straight train through, takes about 2 hours, is it? I think about 2 hours.
About an hour and an hour.
Yeah. So about
an hour on the Eurostar to Lille, and then, or an hour and 15, I think.
Yeah, an hour and 15 to get to Lille, and then about 45 minutes the other side, but obviously you've got like an hour stopover. I think the way back last time we had an hour and a half, so obviously a little bit longer on the way back.
Whereas the one to
Gare du Nord,
yeah, was, I think it's about 2 and a bit.
Yeah, I think it's just over 2 hours.
45-minute train as well. So.
Yeah, it's at least 45 minutes on the RER. Yeah, it probably takes, I would say, over 3¼ hours to get there, all in all, on the Eurostar anyway. So pretty much the same journey time really, but going via Lille was my favourite because there's a really good shopping centre at Lille as well, which you can pop over to. There's a Primark, so because it was freezing in January, I stopped in the Primark quickly and got some earmuffs because it was so cold. Obviously there's like restaurants and stuff there. It doesn't open super early, the Lille shopping centre, so if you're on a really early train like we were, not everything was open straight away. We're going that way.
That was a Saturday though.
That was a Saturday, yeah, so maybe if you go weekdays it might actually be open earlier, which we would have found out on Wednesday, but obviously we can't, because I think the train that we usually get from St Pancras is like 6:47 in the morning, so just before 7 we usually actually stay over at St Pancras or King's Cross somewhere overnight, just get a cheap Travelodge hotel for 40-50 quid or whatever, and just stay overnight, because our trains from where we live don't start into town until like 5 in the morning, so it's cutting a bit of fine to get to the Eurostar on time for passport control and everything, so we tend to do that. Just makes it a little bit easier. That's obviously the Eurostar. We have been via Eurotunnel as well. We drove down to Dover, Folkestone on one evening, stayed in a travel lodge close to Folkestone that night, and then we got the Eurotunnel at about 4:30 in the morning, or 5:30, 5 o'clock, really early in the morning, and then drove from Calais to Disneyland Paris, which took about 4.5 hours, I think it was, for the drive. And we're about 2 and a bit hours away, or about 2 hours away from Folkestone anyway, so if you did the whole journey in one, it is a really long drive. It's not an awful drive because it's just very straight roads, but that can also be pretty boring, so probably wouldn't do that again, and we only stayed for one night. So different way of travelling, but not ideal. I have also been via coach when I was at school, which was awful, as you can probably imagine. The only way that I haven't been is flying, so, but not on my list, because you have to get to the airports 2 hours early at least, so kind of cuts out a bit of your time that you could have had, so not really ideal to fly. So that is our little recap about travel. Just one point, if you book the Eurostar fairly early when they open up their tickets, which I think is about 8 or so months in advance, you can get them really cheap for like £29 each way. The closer you get to the date, the more expensive the tickets become. They don't tend to do any like sudden dips in price last minute or anything like that. They sometimes do a £29 sale as well, which obviously you can pick up cheap routes on. And then there is a website that you can look at where they release like people who have cancelled their tickets. They release the tickets onto this website, and it's like a pool where you can kind of like bid on them, I think, but I've never used it, not sure. So yeah, that's travel. Next we're going to have a little bit of a chat about hotels. We have stayed in a couple of different hotels, sort of in and around. We've never stayed on site together. I have stayed on site previously when I went with my school when I was like 16. No, that's a lie actually. I stayed on site when I went with a friend. I think I was like 12, maybe 13. I think 12. And we stayed at the Sequoia Lodge Hotel, which is just on the lake. Really, really lovely. It's like a kind of...
Didn't you stay with your family in the camping?
Oh yeah, I've stayed on site twice. I lie. Thanks. So I stayed twice on site. Once at Sequoia Lodge when I was like 12, with a friend. It's got a lovely pool with like a little waterfall. I don't know if the waterfall's still there, but was really nice, and you can just walk over to the parks. That time we were supposed to get the Eurostar home like a later time in the evening. I think like maybe like 6 or 7 o'clock, and then the trains got cancelled, or the Eurostar signalling went down. So Disney actually put us up in the New York hotel for a night, which was really lovely. We got like an extra morning in the parks, and we just got the train back home in the morning. So that was my first time on site. And then my second time on site, we stayed at the Davy Crockett Ranch. I went with my mum and dad, sister, aunt, uncle, and my 2 cousins. And we actually did it as a little surprise for my little cousin. I knew about it for weeks and weeks and weeks when my mum and my aunt booked it for us. My dad and my aunt both drove, similar to what I did in January. They're like really good. They're like cabins, so they have like a couple of different bedrooms, kind of like a static caravan that we'd have here. But you do have to drive if you stay at David Crockett Ranch. You have to drive to the parks in the mornings. When you go, there's no like transport, or you can't walk like you can from the other hotels. So that's the ones that I have done before. I don't know if you remember the one that you went to when you were little.
No, it was just a random
one.
Yeah.
When we've been, we have stayed in sort of off-site hotels. The first time we went, we actually stayed in sort of between Paris and Disneyland, and we just got the train in every day. We went to the parks for 2 days, but before that we went into Paris for 2 days. So we actually stayed somewhere different. Then the next time we stayed in the Kyriad Disneyland Paris Hotel, which is now called something different. I'm not 100% sure what it's called now. I'll find out and I'll put it down below. The hotel is fine. It was quite basic. Really good breakfast buffet. I'd actually stayed there before when I went with school when I was 16. But it's got like free transportation to the parks, which is really good obviously if you're there and you can't get around, which we didn't have a car or anything. But it's just buses that come every 15 or so minutes, would you say? 15-20 minutes maybe,
at least.
And we went in February, so it was freezing cold, winter, fairly quiet. And the thing that we found that was quite difficult with the buses is that they were frequent enough, don't get me wrong, but they also did like a loop of like 5 other different hotels, which meant that they could be really busy when they picked us up. And there was a big queue of people waiting to get on the bus at the end of the night. So
it wasn't that there was a queue, was there? Because there wasn't a queue.
It wasn't just every man for themselves.
We would miss one, and then we'd be at the front of the queue, and all of a sudden, 5 minutes before it arrived, we'd be at the back of the queue.
Yeah, because people would just swarm in front. Yeah, it was kind of every man for themselves, really. So yeah, we kind of wait, and then loads of people just pushing the doors before us, and we'd end up last again. Which we probably should have been a bit more aggressive, but who wants to be aggressive when you're at Disney? So yeah, it was a bit that put us off, and we wouldn't stay in one of those hotels again just because it made it difficult.
Their own bus.
Yes, there are hotels with their own bus, which doesn't go to like every other resort, which somebody that Ben works with actually stayed in the Radisson. Was it the Radisson? Radisson Blue has its own hotel bus, which would obviously make it a lot easier.
Next door to where our one was, and it was always empty.
Yeah, so it was obviously a much better one. The bus stop was literally always empty, so that would probably be a better choice. Obviously, it would have been quite a lot more expensive. I think we paid like £45 a night for the Kyriad, so you can't really moan for the price. But we'd rather pay a little bit extra now and go somewhere a bit different, which is what we've done this time. So we have been going and staying at the Ibis at Val d'Europe when we get the train. So it's literally one stop on the RER train, which is the same train that you get from Central Paris into Disneyland Paris. It's one stop.
The only train that goes out.
Yeah, it's literally the only train that goes in and out. There's RER, it's a red one. It just goes into Paris, and that's it. So it's one stop. It's next to the Val d'Europe shopping centre, which is huge. There's a Carrefour there, there's a Primark. There's an outlet centre bit at the back with loads of different designer things.
We were a bit concerned about walking around, wasn't we?
Yeah.
We literally from you leave the train station, you can see it, and it's just across a small courtyard.
Yeah, literally
so obviously we
seconds.
Were thinking, especially in that summer, it was sort of maybe like 12:30 by the time we got back, and didn't really want to be walking around.
Exactly, yeah, because when we went the first time, the hotel that we stayed at wasn't particularly nice walking around at night, so we were kind of worried about that being the same sort of situation. But it's door to door from getting off the train to getting into the hotel, 90 seconds max, I would say, like a minute and a half over a bridge.
Stepping out of the train.
That's out the doors into the door of the hotel, so really, really convenient. It's like you get like a book of tickets, 10 tickets for like €12 or something. So yeah, really cheap and just a really quick way to get there, and it gets you obviously into the train station, which is exactly where the buses drop you off, so it's no different sort of time wise.
Find it quicker and less stressful.
Quicker, easier. You're off the train, up the steps, up the escalator, put your little ticket in, you're done, you're there. You're at a back check.
15 minutes, and the bus was every 15 minutes.
Yeah.
So
the time-wise,
the actual time on the train is less than you are on a bus. So it's kind of, obviously it's an additional cost, but
That's it. But
less stress, I guess.
for us, it's just much more convenient, and the train takes less time than the bus
Literally like
does.
3 minutes.
Yeah, literally. You sit down, and by the time you're there, you're standing back up again straight away. There's no difference in
Whereas
time.
the bus, you're on Disney roads, which can be quite congested.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we drove, we stayed at a different hotel, which I think was called Residence Du Val De Europe or Residence de Home. French
No, that's the
pronunciation
one-
again.
I think that's the one next. I don't know. Yeah.
I can't remember. Again, if I find it, I'll put the information down below. But
Very standard.
very, very bog standard hotel. There was parking, which is probably one of the only reasons that I chose it, to be honest, because we could park the car there. And then we drove into the parks, which was fine. It was a little bit difficult, and we probably spent about 15 minutes driving around the first day, didn't we? Just kind of there's like passovers and flyovers and underpasses that you kind of have to drive through, and it made it a little bit complicated. But once we knew the way there, 5 minutes, it was fine, but it was just a bit complicated to start with. But I wouldn't do that again. I wouldn't drive again, I don't think, unless there was a specific reason to need to drive. Like the last time we went in January, there were French rail strikes, and that caused a little bit of difficulty. Luckily our Eurostar was okay, but our SNCF train,
It was all on the way home, wasn't it?
yeah, kind of all got jumbled around and made it a little bit complicated. But again, it was fine. The people at the SNCF ticket office at Lille station were so helpful. I was a little bit worried that they wouldn't be very helpful, but they were so helpful. Made it much easier than it could have been. So what could have been a bit of a weird situation actually was fine. But yes, that's our kind of experience with hotels. Ibis is great. Kyriad, the hotel's fine.
It's just a very basic hotel. But it's
Yeah.
clean.
Exactly, that's all we kind of need. Is we just need, and we're exactly the same when we go to Florida, we just need a base that's got a bed for us, and quite like some like tea and coffee making facilities, which Kyriad has. The Ibis has a kettle in the room.
It
Oh no,
didn't
it
last
doesn't.
time.
No, it doesn't have a
It
kettle in the
did
room.
Before, but there's always someone in the kitchen
Yes.
that filled up the
Yes,
flasks.
you're right. Sorry, yeah. We just took our flasks, our hot flasks. I took like sachets of hot chocolate and coffee, and just took the flasks downstairs, and they just filled them up in the bar area with their sort of hot coffee machine.
And we got back one night about 11:30, and there's
Yeah,
someone
we
there
got
to do
back
it.
really late, and there was somebody there to do it.
And obviously, first thing in the morning, it's breakfast, so there's always someone there.
Exactly. So we do find it really nice to have a hot drink, particularly because we have been in the winter quite a few times. So we've been January, February, we've been December, and then the other times we've been in the like height of summer, like July.
Yeah, there's all kinds there.
So in the winter, it is really nice to get back from the parks and have a nice hot drink, because it can get really cold, as I'm sure you can probably imagine. And if you've ever been in January or February, you'll know exactly how cold it can get. December, when we went on like the 16th of December, so just before Christmas, and it poured down like torrential rain, to the point where I was so glad that I had my car in the car park, because I got holes in my shoes, and I went back and I had some wellies in my car, so I actually went back and put my wellies on so that we could watch the fireworks show at the end of the night, which is really good. So I was definitely pleased to have my car that time, because it does get really cold. It's very open there, so
You just have shoes with no holes.
yeah, just have shoes with no holes, which I learned, and I had to buy socks because my socks had got soaked through. So yeah, definitely lesson learned on that one. And now I always put spare socks in my bag when I'm going to make sure that doesn't happen again. So that kind of wraps it up for hotels. We don't know too much about the on-site hotels. We did have a look in the Disneyland Hotel the last time we went. We went in and chilled out a little bit just while we were waiting for the train to come home. It's lovely, very expensive, so I don't think it's probably on the cards for us, but it is lovely, and definitely worth a look round if you get time, or you can go in there. You can just go through the doors and have a little nose around we're absolutely fine with it. There's no issues with that at all. Again, pretty similar to kind of all the other
We use the toilets.
Disney hotels. Go and have a little loo if you need to, which is what we did because it was freezing and we needed a loo. So yeah, much nicer than the park toilets, so highly recommend. So that concludes the end of video 1. Hope you enjoyed it. If you can leave any kind of tips or pointers for me, this is my first time vlogging, so if you can leave any kind of tips or what you think in the comments below, that would be much appreciated. Any kind of feedback. If you do like the videos, please like, so hit the thumbs up button, subscribe to my channel if you want some more kind of content like this in the future. It's a real shame that we didn't get to go on our trip because we would have had some actual trip videos, but as soon as we get back I'll actually have some trip videos for you. So subscribe, hit the notification bell, and then you can get updates of when we post new videos.